Hey everybody, so I've done a little bit of work so far. Assembled this much and did some black lining there, and a little bit there. These parts swing out for the arms. So far the build is pretty enjoyable. But, as you can see here, probably, this side is nice and lined up, while this side still needs some. But it's very easy to do. So, I'll show you. You take a good amount of paint there, and you just sort of get it on there. And after you've done about a good 2-3 of them, all you do is wipe it away gently, and you do it right, you'll have nicely lined piping. Pretty simple, but I figured it was worth showing, so I'll go ahead and finish up the rest of these and come back with another part of this little tutorial session for the Sazabi. Alright, so I got a little more of the torso finished. Finished the lining on the piping here. I slapped on this little front red piece, the housing for the mega particle cannon, and this little red piece back here. And, well, right now I'm at a point where I need to include one of these yellow pieces here. This one. And, I could line this up and slap it in there, but looking ahead and looking at the manual, you will notice all these yellow parts. Everywhere that, in this picture, everywhere there's some yellow, that has to be painted. They do not give you convenient little extra yellow pieces to stick in there or anything, which I wish they did, but that presents a little bit of a problem. You see, I want the yellows in these vents and thrusters to match the yellow in here, but I don't have any closely matching paint to go with this color here. But I have a solution. I'm going to use this as my new standard yellow for the whole kit, which means I'm going to have to do some recoloring of these parts. So whenever the assembly requires me to use one of these yellow parts, as I go along I'm going to snip it out and paint it with this Krylon stuff here. And additionally, when details like these become necessary, I'm going to use that same paint and try to apply it into those areas as well. Now I'll go into more depth about how I'll do that when I get to that point, but for now I suppose I can go over basic setup tutorial for how I go about painting parts with spray paint. Okay, so now I've cut this little part out and it's ready to be painted. But for people who are new to Gunpla in general, I'm going to explain why you want to cut the parts out before you paint them. Because even I've made the mistake of painting parts while they're still on the trees. But why you don't want to do that is, say, right here. Now, say you wanted to paint these parts black, okay? When you go to snip the part out, if you've painted it before cutting the parts out, every point at which the part attaches to the tree is going to have a big, ugly yellow scar right in the middle of your black paint, which is not good. Plus, I've found that when you try painting things in the frame, I find it hard to reach certain angles, like say you want to get the inside of this thing. Well, you might be able to get it, but notice how it lines right up with the outside of the tree here. And plus you'd have to separate all these yellow bits from the rest of the tree, or else you're going to get yellow paint all over those parts too, or whatever color you're going to apply. So those are all multiple good reasons for separating the parts from the trees before you paint them. Anyway, how I'm going to prep this part for paint is I'm going to start with one of these bamboo skewers for shish kebabs. And then I'm going to take blu-tack and stick it to the end of that skewer. Make sure it's attached nicely there, and just so that it has a solid anchor. Now, blu-tack is a very handy tool when you're building Gundam models. There are half a dozen uses you can use this stuff for, and I'll get into more of what you can do with this stuff in future tutorials, but for the time being, it's an ideal way to attach parts to the skewer. Now, look around the part you're trying to paint and find the area of the part that will not be seen once you put the model together. This is what will show, but the sides don't show, and the back doesn't show. And the back even has that convenient little peg for where it attaches to the model. So what I'm going to do is use that peg and stick it in the blu-tack, like so. And it's as easy as that. Your part is ready to be painted. Now all you got to do is find an area with good ventilation, wear some gloves and a mask, and you could paint it pretty easily this way. It's a way to hold the part out at a good distance without spraying yourself or whatever. And it also allows you to then stick the stick into some kind of drying block that will hold it while the part dries. So before I actually apply the paint to this part, what I'm going to do is apply primer to it. Now, I'll explain the advantages of primer. For one, it helps paint apply more smoothly to the plastic and helps it stick better too. But there's also the matter of the color of your primer. For something like yellow that I'm using, if you want your yellow to be bright and colorful, you want to use something like a white primer. And here's why. Another advantage of the primer is that, well, like say, because I have to apply yellow paint to the parts that are already yellow, but I also have to apply it to black parts and red parts. And if I didn't use primer and I just applied yellow paint to the yellow parts, the red parts, and the black parts, they'd all come out looking different. The red part that got sprayed with yellow is going to be like a warmer shade of yellow. The yellow part that's sprayed with yellow will look a little more the way it's supposed to, and the black part that's sprayed with yellow is going to look very dull and dark. So, what primer allows you to do is sort of make a standard for all the parts that you're going to paint. This is like basically making all the parts a default white, so that when you apply the yellow paint, no matter what part it is you're painting, with the white primer on there, your yellow is going to turn out basically the same for every part you paint it with. So that's the advantages of primer, and I recommend anybody to use it if they're planning on doing custom model projects. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint this, and then I'll come back and show you the difference between how it looks now and how it looks with the paint.